Welcome to another episode of the Geekeasy podcast. I'm Dr. Karen Oughton, and this is
Adam Stephen Kelly.
And we're here today to bring you another dose of amazing film talk, some TV fun, and various songs, music competitions, all the rest of it. So for today in particular, we have
Paul Davis, the writer-director of the upcoming short film Him Indoors, also the writer-director of Beware the Moon, that excellent documentary on an American werewolf in London. He's going to be talking about his new film, Him Indoors, which stars Reece, Shearsmith and Pollyanna, Macintosh, who horror fans will definitely know from being in The Woman, last year's controversial horror hit.
Although we're reliably informed she's actually quite nice.
Yes.
I'll believe it when I see it, but okay. We also have various film shout-outs. So again, people, if you have a project you're trying to get going, let us know and let's help to promote you.
Yes, please do let us know about that. Also, we have the Time Capsule. If you remember, on the last episode, we were looking at Japanese pink cinema and pinkie violence. And Karen had a look at New Tokyo Decadence The Slave, and you saw her reaction. Also, there's video on YouTube. That was quite funny, to say the least.
He sent me porn!
Effectively. Today, I will be looking at Beautiful Girl Hunter.
Can you give us a very, very vague idea of what you thought of this rather wonderful little nugget of a film, which I must admit I love?
It's a peculiar little movie about rape.
Not just about rape, it's about dogs as well. But anyway.
Yeah. Lots of dogs and butter and rape.
Oh, I can't even remember the butter. Okay, we're being naughty. I can't remember the butter. Well, I want toast now. Okay.
No, you don't.
Bad, okay. What else do we have?
A competition. Last week we had two competitions. Today we're giving away a Blu-ray of the Chuck Norris film, which is newly released on Blu-ray, a Force of One. And Chuck Norris, of course, is in The Expendables 2, which is just about to come out.
Oh, squee. But the thing with this is, of course, to win that rather amazing prize, you guys have got to get your fingers out, and not just with an easy question this time. So what we'll be doing, Adam will be describing a bit later on exactly how you get involved.
Absolutely.
Says he who has just been forced to sit and watch Beautiful Girl Hunter. Yeah. Okay. And finally, just so you can keep up to date with what we're doing, please follow us on social media, stalk us, guys. On Twitter and so forth, I am Dr. Karen Oughton. That's Dr. Karen Oughton with the odd spelling of Oughton. And
I am at BritGeekAICN on Twitter, and I'm also on Tout. I am BritGeekAICN, and Karen is on Tout as well. She's Dr. Karen Oughton, but she hasn't actually touted yet. I've been doing touts. I like Tout, and I think more people should get Tout, because it'll be a pretty cool thing to incorporate into the Geekeasy, I think. So if you're listening, get Tout.
That's a bloody good point, actually. Anyway, moving swiftly forward, in terms of what's been going on this week, how much have you been bitching about the Sight and Sound poll? Be honest here.
I have been venting on Twitter a little bit since the poll came out, but I don't know. It wasn't with the top 10 greatest films of all time. Supposedly, it was more to the fact of the whole principle of the poll. Which, for those listening who are perhaps not familiar with it, the BFI Sight and Sound magazine surveyed 846 critics, programmers, academics, and distributors, and they all voted on on what they feel were the greatest films of all time. And out of all the votes, basically a top 10 was drawn. And after 50 years, Citizen Kane was toppled as the supposedly greatest film of all time by Alfred Hitchcock's Vertigo. Yeah, I don't know. This is supposedly the greatest films of all time, but I'm of the opinion that there is no greatest film of all time. There are only great films, and I've said that a lot actually over the past couple of years, and I definitely stick to my guns on that one. Hey, I love some of the films on the list, on the top 10, But I mean, come on, who's to say that there is a greatest film of all time, or there are these 10 movies are the greatest films of all time? I mean, who's to say?
How do you think of it in terms of? I mean, it's a bloody academic exercise, isn't it? Really. I mean, when we look down, films list, we've got the black and white. I mean, even Citizen Kane, obviously black and white. We also have things like Tokyo Story. What else do we have? Things like Sunrise, Song of Two Humans. It's all very academic, all very ivory towery, isn't it?
Yeah, it's yeah. I mean, all the films in the top 10 are very old, which obviously is no bearing on their quality. Obviously, I'm not one of those people who's like, oh, it's black and white, I'm not going to watch it. I'm not that stupid. But it is interesting to see that I had a glance through. Obviously, read all the top 10 and glanced over the top 50, and I think the latest film, or the most recent film on that list, was from 1985, as far as I could see. And I do think there is a little bit of pretentiousness, perhaps. And, who's to say that there haven't been any great movies since 1985? I mean, that's just a crazy thing to say.
It does make you wonder, in terms of when we talk about the idea of calling films great, whether they have thought... They're using it as basically standard, to try and say this is what a great film is, and because of this, the second you start creating an idea of what a great film is, it becomes very hard to break out of that mold to say, well, actually, no, this is a completely different approach, because you can end up just making things seem like a bit like the Emperor's New Clothes if it doesn't have the same standard of technological innovation, for example. I mean, I'll be honest, I was one of the critics who was actually, my choices are in that poll. And while I will say I did choose Citizen Kane and Vertigo, the rest of my films are not going to be, I would imagine, anywhere near the top, because it is weird and wonderful stuff that people who do follow my Twitter account will know about. Things like, you're giggling because I told you, things like, I've included kids films now, a family film, shall we say, because otherwise it looks so much like sensible films for boring people. Don't it, really? I mean, honestly, with the exception, I'd say, partially of Vertigo, because, Jimmy Cagney can't help but be slightly funny. He's sweet. And you can't help in some places just laughing. Looking back at it now, this is a guy who's in It's a Wonderful Life. It's old Jimmy, for God's sake. And it doesn't have that air of seriousness that suddenly makes you think of some journalists I could name, but I won't because they're nice, who cultivate this idea of almost a greyness, this idea that things can't be great unless they're steeped in tradition the whole time.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're probably the only critic who was surveyed who has 2 of the films on their list. I could guarantee that out of the 846 people, that you were the only person who wrote 2 films in particular down. Which is good, because but it spices things up a bit, and certainly a bit more interesting than the top 10 list. And that's not just take away from the films. I mean, hey, number 1 is Vertigo, a great film. I'm not saying it's the greatest, but it is a great film. Citizen Kane, again, I consider it to be a great film. F.W. Murnau's Sunrise, a very enjoyable movie. The Searchers, another great film. But I mean, I wouldn't put. I don't know. I mean, if I was polled, and I'd have to say these are my top 10 favourite films, I'm not sure if I'd put any of those movies in, to be honest.
I mean, I think the thing to me, and I have said a bit about this in the blarble that will come out on the Sight and Sound website, it's a case of understanding what we call great. And great, to me, it's partly, to me, it's a distinction between what a film can do with society, how the hell it matters. So it's not just 2 guys sitting in a room saying, oh, how wonderful this film is for, or whatever. God knows who Claude is mine, but, but where it's either something that's technologically advanced or just has something that really makes people feel, makes people do something, makes people give the film a life, for Christ's sake. So that film becomes, I mean, to me, film becomes important when it becomes something that can actually change society. It's something people care about that can either change the way people live their lives or help them think of their lives differently.
Yeah. Or indeed contribute to changing the landscape of cinema. I mean, Citizen Kane's on the list. That movie is amazingly shot, and the cinematography in it is almost revolutionary. Like you said, I mean, film is by nature subjective. Obviously, greatness is subjective. And what's number 1 on IMDb? I think The Shawshank Redemption is still number 1. I would probably put that in my top 10 favourite films of all time. I love that film.
I whistle.
Yeah. But hey, that's on IMDb. This is just another list, and I know it's supposed to be 846 critics, academics, and whatever. But I mean, this is just opinions. And interestingly enough, how many times have you heard the phrase when people are comparing something, they say it's the Citizen Kane of, say this is an epic song by Phil Collins.
You're gonna get hate mail, boy.
And people say, oh, this is the Citizen Kane of music or something.
Yes.
It's and it's, someone could say that and the other person be like, hey, I hated Citizen Kane. What does that mean? Everything is subjective, so it's like, well, why should there be lists like this? I mean, it should be, I'd rather it was 846 critics, just listing their favourite films of all time. And hey, or reword the list and say this is the top 10 average of people's favourites.
I mean,
And where's Jaws?
Sometimes I really could adopt you. God only knows where Jaws is. It's probably somewhere down near my entrance, to be entirely honest with you.
Probably.
I mean, the thing is, I must admit, from my perspective, I get intrigued because, I'm very interested in the idea of cinema as something that can change the way people think and make people actually do stuff. But by the same token, I do teach film studies, and a lot of what I teach people, firstly, is the most obvious stuff. Okay, this is what a follow shot is. This is what a medium long shot is. So, to me, in some respects as well, a film, if it's going to achieve its aims, it has to use things like decent acting, obviously decent storyline, but also decent, the appropriate ways of using a camera to achieve its effect, which is partly why I find it very, very hard. I mean, I think I'm going to get absolutely shot by a lot of people on my choices, which I'll leave them to see at the time.
Yeah, got to be careful not to spit my coffee out there.
It irritates me no end when people who have seen, particularly films within the horror genre, exploitation films and so forth, and yes, I'm going dangerously close, so much so my feet are on fire, ow, 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 where people will then, they will complain when a film achieves its aims if those aims are considered to be below what is considered to be good cinema. For example, the idea of, notice how many films in the top 10 have an idea of taking people above, above the everyday. And for example, Nigel Andrews discussing Citizen Kane from the Sight and Sound poll, Nigel Andrews says those two films, in other words, Vertigo and Citizen Kane, are just still the best at doing what great cinema ought to do, extending the everyday into the visionary. Instantly there, we have not just the idea of technical excellence, we have the idea of that certain subjects are accepted to be what great film is about.
Yeah.
Instantly, we've moved away from the idea of being great film as being what it says on the tin. You want to see a scary film, it should scare the living shit out of you. If you want to see a love film, you want to, it doesn't matter if you're the biggest misanthropist in the world, you should want to go out and buy roses for everybody in the street. But instantly there, we have the idea of some kind of quasi, almost religious experience, certain subjects which are suitable for film, and that is what gets my goat. About, not with this list, because the list is only made up of the people involved in it. And to be honest with you, fair dues to the guys, they've asked people like me whose tastes are not generally in classics.
No, not quite. But hey, there are some classics in your list.
There are some, because,
Your tastes are far and wide.
They are. The tastes are far and wide, and also I'm not going to, I'm never going to throw a strap and say, well, I like torture porn. There, I said it, huh? I'm not going to say I like torture porn, so therefore I will only have torture porn in my list, because that's not the way I feel. My personal take on the list was in order to reflect, I felt a responsibility. Being able to contribute to something like this, even though I'm one of hundreds of people, you have a responsibility to give films that deserve a name check that chance. For somebody to actually, people will sit there scrolling through this list at stupid o'clock in the morning, and it gives these films a chance for a second for somebody to say this might actually be worth 2 minutes of my time, rather than just discarding as exploitative pap. It gives those films a chance to have somebody just think once more, maybe I should give this one try, at least find out a little bit about it before I just slug it off and say it's worthless. I really want to see the rest of the list because I want to see what other people put, whether they've taken that chance to take the list beyond the stodgy ivory tower and make it relevant, and not just relevant to geeks and people who, like me, are going to often teach film studies, journalists, whoever, people who sell film and whatever else they want to compare it to sell the next film along, but to give people an idea of our cultural heritage and say, well, hey, this is what worked in here, this is what worked here, what can we do to make this move forward, to make it so that we have some more up-to-date films in there.
Definitely. Actually, there are a lot more up-to-date films on another list, which I saw, I believe it was yesterday. They basically asked a bunch of UK-based bloggers.
Hey, you guys.
Okay, I don't know.
I do remember, I'm saying because I do remember Twitter's hashtag Max Wren talking about this particular list. I think it's been included on that.
Oh, right.
Hi, Stuart.
Yeah. Hey, you guys then, or possibly another website, had got a bunch of bloggers together, and they gave their top 10. And a lot of the entries on there were more, I guess I would call them more passionate entries, because there weren't too many. There was a lot more. It was much more of a mixed bunch than the BFI top 10 or top 50 even. And I don't know. Like I said, I think there was a degree of pretentiousness and in the BFI poll compared to this sort of. I think the bloggers one was perhaps more genuine. Wow, Jaws is number 1.
Okay, we now have the Hey You Guys poll open, and oh dear, it's interesting actually. I must admit, I really, really like it. Jaws, yeah, pretty cool.
Yeah, Jaws number 1.
Yep. So yes, after you've shot your load all over the Great White, or shot your shot your Great White over the load. Yeah, come on, this is what you get with me. Back to the Future. I mean, seriously. I mean,
Do you have issues with Back to the Future?
I got absolutely. I had the piss taken out of me so much by my students last time I showed this, because we ended up with a discussion over who fancies Michael J. Fox more.
Oh.
We'd been about half of the class, including the guys, are kind of involved in the same discussion. It's like, okay, all serious academia shoots off that out the window somewhere. And it's like, okay, we need to talk about film shots, guys.
The Dark Knight.
I'm pleased with that, to be honest.
I guess, I don't know. That would not be in my top 100. Although it's great, I do love it.
I love it.
But actually, out of that top 10 list on HeyYouGuys.co.uk, only one of those films is actually on the BFI, on the Sight and Sound top 10, and that's Citizen Kane, which is number 5. And actually, what's interesting is that actually, I just realised they totally messed up their number system. It's actually number 8. Their list goes 1, 2, 3, 3, 5, 5, 5, 5, 9, 10, 10. So it's a top 11. Should probably get that sorted. On their top 11, Citizen Kane is 7, and Psycho, Alfred Hitchcock's Psycho, is number 6. So, interestingly enough, you do have a Hitchcock film ahead of Citizen Kane, but it's not Vertigo. Vertigo is not on the list. It's Psycho, which is actually my favourite Hitchcock film of all time. What about this? Pulp Fiction's on the list. Another film I probably put on my top 10 favourites of all time. John Carpenter's The Thing. Ridley Scott's Alien.
You're having a fumble about it, aren't you, Sally?
It's a good list. I don't know. It's somewhere between this list and the BFI list. I don't know, a lot of great films.
I think it's the only exception is Psycho, which people are force fed at Christmas.
Christmas, really?
I'm sure it's always on at Christmas. I'm positive it is.
Jaws the Revenge is always on at Christmas. Well, the Jaws Revenge is always on ITV2. Every day. Really?
Strange person. Then again, that I would say to a young person is probably considered. That would be considered to a lot of my students, for example, classic cinema. I mean, to most of my students who are obviously between the ages of about 18 and about 22, generally, to them, horror begins at Hostel.
Yeah.
And that's about as far back as their mind stretch. Until, of course, they, encounter me and things like Nosferatu. It's interesting because Pulp Fiction as well, I mean, It is so well put together. It has had such a... It's kind of coming... I think I do wonder whether 10 years down the line the sound listing particularly will be very different, because they are, it looks like, beginning to let far more people in now, beginning to let far more films have a voice as a result of that. And now there are so many academics like, say, Michael Coven at Worcester, I believe, who are writing far more, in an academic way, in a science-sounded type way, if you will, about these films. Whether, how much that will impact, whether you will have this cross-fertilization where all of a sudden you can have stuff like Pulp Fiction suddenly appearing on sites down this far higher up, because all of a sudden it becomes acceptable to do so.
Yeah. Thing is, though, I mean, like the Hey Guys list, like you said, turning into a fanboy. This list
I say that in a nice way, I must admit. It's just the science enthusiasm is just lovely.
This list, probably so many academics would just call this list, a fanboys list. But then you look at the films on here, and they're just, they're genuinely, at least in my opinion, they're genuinely great movies.
Yes.
I mean, like we said, Pulp Fiction there, Alien, which I think is a masterpiece of horror and suspense. You've got Jaws, my favourite film of all time. Back to the Future. I mean, who doesn't like Back to the Future? You've got Blade Runner on there. 2001, okay, a lot of people, you kind of either love it or hate that film.
It does make you wonder whether, again, there is this kind of underlying thing. You said there, who doesn't enjoy these films? I think that's perhaps a key point. This idea that you're not meant to enjoy art, you're meant to appreciate it. It's not meant to be fun. And
Yeah.
that's utterly bloody wrong. And I think you're right in the sense that you should be able to enjoy film.
If you want to outright appreciate the art, then watch an art house film. Watch The Seventh Seal by Ingmar Bergman. Almost forgot who did that then.
So yeah, I think that, for me, the main thing is, it would be nice. I'm hoping that the people, if the rest of the people who contributed to Pollyanna like me, I'm hoping they have taken a chance to make it a bit more representative. Because I refuse to believe that people think that films, some of the other films particularly, only the older ones are better. What do you reckon? Do you think it's a message of it? Or?
That seems to be what's coming through at the moment. I mean, I hope it's not that when all the, everyone else's, when the full, list comes out from the top 50, that seems to be the message, unfortunately. Now then, it is time to continue with the Time Capsule. Now, if you remember, in our debut episode 2 weeks ago, we began talking about Japanese pink cinema and pinkie violence, and I subjected Karen to a viewing of New Tokyo Decadence, The Slave from 2007, a spin-off sequel kind of thingy of Tokyo Decadence from I believe 1992, I think. And yes, that was a very strange movie indeed. And I got Karen watching it, got her reaction on episode 1, and also you can now see the footage of her reviewing that film for the very first time on YouTube. But now that we are on episode 2, I have been tasked to watch a film by the name of Beautiful Girl Hunter, which I do believe is from the 70s. Dr. Karen gave me this movie to watch, and so now you can hear what I have to say about watching that for the very first time. So I'm pressing play right now, and well, starting off quite abruptly actually. There's no opening titles or anything, just cutting to some guy presumably escaping from the police, and there's a knife, big old knife pointing at some woman's face. That's nice. Mention of rape and murder here in the first 30 seconds. Oh, and a woman bound by some kind of red material. She's being beaten by some guy. At knife point, I might add. And there's a man who's being some sort of robbery going on. You want to blow me? He asks this poor bound woman. Uh-oh. He's sticking his fingers in her mouth. Now he's molesting her orally and laughing as he's doing it. I shouldn't laugh myself, but it kind of looks funny. You're nice and wet, he says. He's, your, your wife, your wife has a real nice pox, apparently. In the grand spectrum of rape scenes, this is kind of funny. Yeah, just in this spectrum of rape scenes, it's no straw dogs. Okay, don't know what that was, but another abrupt cut. This time to some dead person. And now we are at the son of the rapist, and he's all grown up, wearing skimpy little Y fronts, and he's got a whip. He says he's going to be a bit more like his dad, and he's now whipping this girl. Whipping her quite a lot, actually. Now he's playing tennis, as you do. Just jump cut to a tennis game. Yeah, that's how you do it. All right, now someone's suspended by chains, and she's being jabbed repeatedly with a knife, and we've got the fountain blood here, the kind of Kill Bill blood. Okay, now he's soaked in blood, raping her corpse. There is a lot of rape in this film. A lot of naked showering and whipping as well. Got a bit of everything in it, I think. Now there's a dog eating from a bowl on the floor. Oh, no, it's not a dog. It's a woman. I presume she's got a tongue, and she has limbs, because this actually reminds me of Takashi Miike's Audition, which is a great horror film. And obviously she's taking off all her clothes. Okay, there's a dog licking some substance off this woman's naked body. That is disgusting. Genuinely, that is horrible to look at. That's all kinds of wrong. If you haven't guessed already, this is a strange film. We're totally in bizarro world right now. This movie is edited so bizarrely. I really don't. It doesn't really make a lick of sense. I have no idea what's going on. Oh, it was butter that the dog was licking off. Lurpak, apparently. Okay, that was Beautiful Girl Hunter then, aka Star of David Beauty Hunting, from the 70s, I believe, and peculiar film. A lot of rape, a lot of rope binding, a lot of sadism, a lot of masochism, lots of isms. Actually, a lot of isms and a lot of asms. I'm a very hard person to offend and shock, but the dog scene was genuinely disgusting.
Oh my god, are you okay?
I'm still alive.
That's actually, all joking aside, that's actually really sweet, because you're right, it is a very, very odd film. There are some parts of it, like do you remember the bit where the guy's bouncing on the bed and he falls off? Yeah. That's just absolutely perfect slapstick. And it's very, very silly and very, very funny. And yet, there are other bits that are genuinely quite horrific. I mean, as you say, we joke about all the rapey bits, but damn it, they are disturbing, aren't they?
Yeah, and there's so much of it that you certainly don't get much of a respite. I mean, there is that bizarre comedy element.
Yes.
It is a bit of a mishmash of everything, but it's actually really well shot.
It is. It's beautifully well shot, and that's the funny thing. For anybody who's not seen it yet, I really would advise you to try.
Probably most people.
Yeah. Probably. I mean, I got it, completely legitimately off a market stall in Camden in London. I basically said, "Give me the worst thing you've got." I came back with that. It's one of these things where the scene in it is a scene where the girl is. One of these girls is kind of in a hoist, and she's watching herself on telly, shall we say. You know what I mean here, don't you? And the funny thing is, it's so beautifully shot. The colours are very rich, and the way everything's set up, so so your eyes are guided as to what you can see. It's a very odd little film in the sense that on one same time it's a statement about feminism, genuinely.
Yeah, it is. The colours are really rich. I mean, you get to one scene where this lady, I think it was quite early on, and this lady, as I said in the reaction there's a lot of rope binding. But there's one scene in particular where this woman is bound by sort of this like red kind of satin or velvet sheets, and the colours are so vibrant and rich. Really, although it's a very strange movie, but the way it's shot and the way the colours are going, it's quite a sensual piece.
Yes, very, very much so. And it's interesting because you get this whole idea of the way the body is held or was held differently within that culture compared to scenes where we see what appears to be a chapel, and the colours actually look very very sacred. There's a very strong element of the worship of the body. And of the valuing of the tradition, particularly as some of the characters periodically walk around in kind of traditional costume, and it really challenges in some ways the ways that we view these films, because some of it is really sick. I'll be honest, some of it is genuinely hard to watch. Peace with the Dog, particularly, is very, very hard to watch. But then it's partly because there's this complete reformulation of how other people see these films, and the sheer artistry that goes into it. There's a lot of love gone into this film. It isn't just some old porno hat thinking, wow, let's get my rocks off here. The setup is quite beautiful, and as a result of that, it is within its bracket reasonably well known.
Yeah, I think with in terms of or pink cinema, there is this kind of I mean, you mentioned last week, in the last episode with New Tokyo Decadence, The Slave, that it was porn. It looked like that in some instances. I think as far as pink cinema goes, that there is this line between, kind of pushing the envelope in terms of sex, and then portraying it in such, in this really artsy kind of way.
Yes.
And the film, Beautiful Girl Hunter does have this high production value, and at the same time, it's very deranged. It's interesting how the filmmakers blended, blended the production value and the bizarre content. Yes,
and that's the thing. It's just asking to do a completely different mindset and a very different way of looking at people. I mean, that particular film, there's, as you say, you mentioned Straw Dogs when you were going through it. There is, Straw Dogs over here kicked up such a fuss because of the whole idea that a woman could enjoy or begin to enjoy what is happening to her. And yet, in some respects, and while, of course, I would never go as far as to say that, it is necessarily a good thing, but there's a lot of stuff happening in academia right now, particularly down in areas such as Brighton. I know I saw a paper called Papers the other day looking at this, looking at, seriously, different methods of using humiliation play is used to actually advance the causes of feminism and self-discovery. There's a public speaker called Kate Bornstein, who regularly talks about this kind of stuff, and yet when we, and is becoming increasingly more mainstream. She teaches around universities in America, and she's a bloody good teacher, I will say as well. She does orgasm workshops. She's fantastic. And yet when we see things within the context of a film where it's not our language and all the rest of it, it can really mess with our head. And yet surely that's part of what the point of cinema is, to show us different worlds and different ideas we haven't experienced. So go you for really getting into it, actually. Seriously, I'm really impressed. Oh.
Yes, as I said, it's certainly got a bit of everything. It's, I don't know, hard one to digest, I think.
It is. Well, at least the dog found so, yeah.
Yeah.
But, so, yes, in terms of this, obviously, the two films we picked, for some peculiar reason, I'm not quite sure why, you may have your own ideas on this, were quite full-on films. But for people's reactions for the competition, which we'll discuss in a minute, you can pick something a lot easier. It doesn't have to be hardcore. It can be anything you want. But this, yeah, I must admit, I really love this kind of stuff. I personally find anything that's going to challenge me to be fun. So, yes, moving swiftly on then, away from the porn and the pervert. And now for this week's interview, we have with us the delightful, and strangely not dubious, Paul Davis, who is
the writer, director and editor of the upcoming short film Him Indoors, which is starring Reece Shearsmith, who I'm sure everyone knows from The League of Gentlemen and Psychoville, and Pollyanna Macintosh, who rose to horror stardom last year with Lucky McKee's The Woman. She was the titular character in that film. And Him Indoors, yes, the upcoming short, is getting its world premiere at Film for Fright Fest on Monday the 27th of August at 6:15 p.m, just before the European premiere of The Possession.
He had a rather weird inspiration, didn't he?
He did. Well, this film is about an
Blooper time! This film is about an agoraphobic serial killer. Is what you're trying to say. And it's based on who remembers Game On? Anybody sitcom from, I think it was the 90s, with the rather gorgeous Samantha Janus? Yeah, basically, what was he saying? It was something about extrapolating one of those characters, wasn't it?
Yeah, one of the characters in Game On was arachnophobic. I said it wrong again. Agoraphobic.
It's almost as good as Post-Harvest last week. So yes, Paul's film, basically he got the inspiration after watching Game On, which had a character in it that was agoraphobic. And he was suddenly thinking it would really, really suck to be a serial killer in those circumstances, because you'd have to, it's like the whole spider and the fly thing, actually, the whole kind of arachnophobia thing, which is such an easy slip of the tongue to make. In the sense you have to kind of lure the people into your web. And he had some interesting inspirations as well, didn't he, in terms of serial killers? He was saying, which one was it?
Dennis Nielsen was the main serial killer to inspire that particular character. It wasn't just Game On.
But yes, it's talking about, it's very interesting kind of finding out about how such a quite frankly gentle giant of a guy as Paul is. Seriously, Paul, I mean, how do you actually, now that we've actually got you with us, how does such a sweet, innocent little chappie as yourself come up with the kind of profile for a serial killer? How do you do that?
Basically, I love that there's a distinct mundaneness about British serial killers. I mean, they always look like the weird guy who lives down the street.
Exactly.
And more often than not, that is always the case. You know, there's a sensationalism that's attached to American serial killers, like, you know, Charles Manson, John Wayne Gacy, Ed Gein. It's never the case over here, you know. Dennis Nielsen wasn't a cult leader. John Christie wasn't a highly intelligent Harvard grad who escaped from prison through the ventilation system, you know. It's always just, you know, the weird guy who lives down the street. The most sensational, you know, serial killer we've probably had is Jack the Ripper, and no one knows who he was, so...
You're bloody right. That's a really good point.
I mean, but, you know, some could argue maybe the Yorkshire Ripper or Fred West, but, you know, people were interested for, a week, and then it was, you know, get on with it. But those guys are never really mentioned in the same breath as Ed Gein, Charles Manson, Ted Bundy, Jack the Ripper. So,
yeah.
So it was fun watching Reece kind of tap into that ordinary...
He's a handsome fella, isn't he? It's interesting kind of seeing a couple of the kind of... Even stuff like the main poster, you've got these shitty little eyes coming out of a letterbox. It's not uglifying as such, because he's such a handsome fella. And yes, my number's Aries. But it's more a case of there is this kind of a look as opposed to a big, nasty kind of uber in your face, wahaha-harness, isn't there? How do you think it in terms of English?
I mean, well, yeah. I mean, if you look at guys again like Ted Bundy, you know,
yes,
is mainly, you know, people who are ugly on the inside. They can be charming inside and out, but there is that dark place inside them that is the monster. So yeah, I think it's interesting, and you see that a lot. I mean, American Psycho, Patrick Bateman's one of the best looking guys in the world. It's Christian Bale.
Yeah.
You know? There's something interesting about, you know, having a serial murderer who, with a nudge and a wink, can have you on their bed 1 minute and hanging up on a meat hook next. You know, it's again, it disarms the audience, because you think, oh, here's a normal looking guy, and then there's a knife in your neck.
Yeah, you never know who you're living next to, essentially. And it's
Exactly.
like the BTK killer. I mean, that guy was like he had a job at the a church, and was like this,
God, yes.
a pillar of the community. Yeah, he was,
Yes.
killing people left, right, and centre.
In terms of this Englishness, I mean, you have the whole kind of thing of, it's not her indoors, it's him indoors. And we've got him looking out the letterbox. I mean, do you think there's kind of any other English sensibility in some ways to this film?
Yeah, I mean, he's the typical no sex please, we're British kind of guy, and Pollyanna kind of represents the complete opposite of that, I mean, one of her first lines in the script is, I was just next door having a beer, hanging out, and which is like his worst nightmare. But he addresses it's one of the things I wondered whether or not it was too on the nose, but it kind of works in correlation to what happens in the scene. When the very first shot of the movie, we hear Reece like kind of list the things that he hates. The reasons that he doesn't go outside, because people, or they only live to drink their beer and copulate with each other, they're putrid parasites, all that kind of stuff. So when Pollyanna comes in, she kind of throws little curveballs in the dialogue, different points that point back to that first opening passage. So it was just a lot of fun to watch it play out. And to see those guys together. I thought that they would improvise a lot more, but they didn't. Actually came up to me and, asked me if they should do this differently or how about I do this. And I don't think I ever said no once, because it was always a case of, well, let's do it. If it works, great. And it always did work.
In terms of obviously it's your debut as a director for a narrative film, obviously you're an actor as well. How did acting actually influence, the directing?
Acting was my first love, and I love watching actors work and do their thing. And there were a couple of times, actually, when we were filming the scenes with Reece and Pollyanna, where I had to be nudged by my first AD to yell cut, because I was just so mesmerised. I was like, oh shit, I'm actually here doing a job. Cut! I love watching. I love getting things out of actors. I like watching them try different things. And I basically said to Pollyanna and Reece from the very beginning, I want you to feel natural about everything that I'm asking you to do in this. So, just think of the script as a template. Don't necessarily think of the dialogue as, it's not gospel. If need be, do your own take on it. But they didn't. They practically stuck to the script word for word. If you read the script, there's probably only two things in the film that weren't scripted. And one of them is actually one of my favourite moments in the film. So I'm, kind of glad that we got that in there. In terms of me, from my background, I mean, I was just in awe the whole time. There's a wonderful photo that was taken by the stills guy of Pollyanna and Reece talking in the main living room, and I'm just sat on the sofa, just looking up at them, starry-eyed, like, oh. I wish I could do it as well as them. Otherwise, I would be acting. But it's one of those things where I would never ask an actor to do something that I wasn't willing to do myself. So I always acted out a scene for if they needed to see what it was I was asking them to do. So yeah, that was, and it meant that I got to play as well. So, it was fun. It was fun for me. No, I just appreciate how wonderful they were. And so, it's not just, I'm not one of these directors who says, it has to be this way. This is how you're doing it.
Yeah.
Not stray from this. That's not my job. I don't think any directors should. Well, some directors are set in their ways, but and they get the results because of that. But I don't care if the person in the catering has an idea. I will listen to it, and if it's better than what I've got, I'll fucking use it.
Absolutely. In terms of, you're talking about the Fright-Fest audience, and obviously with the way that you funded this through, is it pronounced sponsoon? I think.
I don't know, actually. I just...
It's odd, isn't it? In terms of that, and in terms of, as you said, this whole idea of a community getting the joke and all the rest of it, I noticed on that site, one of the things you're saying, if people contributed, which of course, thank you everybody who did contribute, you're wonderful.
Thank you very much.
It's uber cool. I noticed that one of the things you've got on it, and I'm going to see if I can skizz down to it so I can actually read it off rather than trying to guess, is you were saying if people contributed, I think it was a couple of hundred, they could have one of the weapons complete with a blood stain.
Yes.
What's that prize? How? I'm interested.
Well, I'm not going to tell you what the weapon is, but
No, sure.
we had a mock-up made of the weapon, and it was used. It was screen used in one shot, and Reece then etched his signature in it, and we delivered. So that person already has the weapon, so they know what it is.
Hold it aloft, whoever you are.
Yes, yeah. But it's funny because I gave them the prop, and then I suddenly found myself with the original, so I kind of got a little memento myself from that moment. But again, that scene is just wow. When I watched it edited together for the first time, when we shot it, because most of the time I was calling the shots from a monitor setup in the kitchen, because the problem with Reece wearing glasses throughout the shoot was you'd quite often see reflections of people who were in the room, on filming it from the other side. So we tried to keep as little people in the living room as possible when we were filming those scenes. But on this particular scene, I was in the room when we did it, and we went for a rehearsal, and Reece came in, did his thing, and as soon as I yelled cut, you heard everybody in the kitchen just like, oh my God, and clapping and whooping, and I was like, oh my God, we got it, that's it, that's exactly what we need. And we filmed it about 3 or 4 times after that, but it hurt every time we watched it. And then when I saw it cut together for the first time, it didn't matter that I'd been there watching it 5 or 6 times when you saw it edited together for the first time. And still watching it now, it's just fucking horrible. It's fucking brutal. So,
why the glasses?
The glasses actually, I'd never actually specified that the character would wear glasses, but my costume designer, David Brown, he said, I've got some glasses just in case. And I was like, okay, well, that's cool. I kind of saw him with or without, that's not a problem. But then when Reece turned up on the first day, he actually brought his own selection of glasses.
Yeah.
And interestingly enough, the pair of glasses that he is wearing in the film are the same glasses he wore in the cottage.
Oh!
It's a little nod there to the fans. But there's again, with regard to references and stuff like that, it wasn't a case of... There were only a couple that I actually put in consciously, because there's one of the main sequences in the film I took directly from the Brian De Palma film Sisters.
Yes.
Which I absolutely adore. The film is actually very heavily influenced by Hitchcock and De Palma. Mainly like the dark sense of humor. I never think that Hitchcock gets enough credit for being as funny as in his thrillers. I mean, Psycho is one of the... He always regarded Psycho as a comedy. It's all in there. Mother's not herself today.
Yes.
So it borrowed very, very heavily from that. But there was a particular sequence that I took from Sisters, which is one of my favourite. It's one of my favourite De Palma movies, but it's also one of my favourite scenes in terms of, tension. It's a wonderful scene in the movie, which I'm not going to, because if I tell you, it'll just give away the gag. But as a little nod to the fact that I'd quite blatantly taken this. I mean, it's got more of a comedy twist in our version, so it's not like I've just plagiarised it scene for scene. But I actually got a little action figure of William Finley from Phantom of the Paradise and put him on the shelf facing towards the area in which this happened. So it's kind of like, the same actor who was in the movie and who was in that scene that we're homaging is kind of looking over us. So So that was kind of nice. But there is some unconscious stuff in there which I've looked back, and it's psycho. You know, there's a line in there where it's I think I kind of did have an idea of what I was doing, but I didn't realise that I was lifting a complete line from Psycho. But you watch it now, and it works. It works as an inside joke, where he's referring to him being a serial killer as his hobby, and that his mother used to help him, and he says every young boy should have a hobby. He used to say, which is, but obviously he's talking about stuffing birds, but he's actually just out and out saying it, killing people is my.
What would you compare it to, the tone of the film? What would you compare it to, other films or TV series or anything?
That is the hardest question I've been asked so far. It's very, very difficult to pigeonhole it. I call it a comedy horror, but it's not like, it's nothing like you've seen Reece do before. It's for anybody who's expecting something League of Gentlemen or Psychoville, it's not. It's, the only thing I could compare it to in terms of what you see on screen and how it plays out are the scenes in Psycho between Norman Bates and Marion Crane.
Yeah. It looks like it's got that realist edge to it, which is really, really nice touch, actually.
Yeah, I mean, it's still played out very different, because obviously you've got Reece, who's this very closed person and just wants to get this woman out of his house. And then you've got Pollyanna, who's being so in your face. You know, I mean, you saw the picture in the press release. You see what she's wearing, that bright pink tracksuit.
Yeah.
First came on the set, when she first got into costume, I just looked at her and I pointed. I said, "Yes, be like that tracksuit." So yeah, I mean that's the only thing I can really compare it to. But of course, the gags and the laughs are there, which with Hitchcock it was kind of underlined. No, sorry, it was more of an undertone. Again, with Psycho, you watch that scene back after you've seen it, knowing what you then eventually find out, and it makes that scene incredibly funny, but in a twisted way.
I think it's really intriguing, actually, because when you cast Reece Shearsmith, especially in the role of a serial killer, and then you automatically think, okay, League of Gentlemen, Psychoville. I mean, you just can't help yourself. But it's really interesting to hear that it's a different approach. I think it's going to be really refreshing, actually.
He's completely different to any of the characters. I think if I had to relate him to any of the characters that he's previously played, it would be, again, it's different, but the closest one I can think of is the librarian who sees Silent Singer in Psychoville.
Oh, right.
Oh, now, Silent Singer. Which again, from a fan point of view, was really fun. I actually asked him on set. I said, "Come on, level with me, Reece. What song is going through your head when you do Silent Singer?" And he actually told me it was from a piece of music from the pantomime that he saw. But whenever he does the Silent Singer, he's got that piece of music in his head, and he's kind of mouthing it and perform. And he actually did the movement Silent Singer on set, and I completely fucking geeked out. And I geeked out even harder when he slipped in a Papa Lazarou voice, which was just because I watched The League of Gentlemen when it first aired, so I've been a fan since the beginning, and I just feel really humbled and really grateful to have worked with him, and Pollyanna as well, because I was a huge fan of the woman.
Yeah.
And of course David Schofield from American Wealth in London, which we haven't mentioned yet, who's got a very, very brief role at the end. It was one of those things where I have to get someone from an American Wealth in London in this. It wouldn't be if I didn't. Everybody's expecting it. I can't let anybody down. I love David. I loved him in Johannes Roberts' film F as well. I mean, and he pops up in everything. He's in Gladiator, The Wolfman, Pirates of the Caribbean movies.
Yeah.
He's got a very distinctive voice, and that's why I wanted him.
Fantastic.
And now for one of our films and industry shout-outs. Okay, now we got a message from a rather lovely sounding young lady called Anna Lily Amipour, who is, get this, a British-born, US-raised, American-Iranian director. Say that when you're pissed. And she's talking about funding for a project called A Girl Walks Home Alone at Night, which she describes as an Iranian vampire western. And the blurb she's basically given us says, this September, the small deserted oil town, Taft, California, will be transformed into an Iranian Gotham called Bad City, a town overrun by prostitution and crime and reeking of death and loneliness. It has a strange population, including a vampire, a prostitute, a pimp, a gambler, a mean little boy, a 57 T-bird, and a Persian James Dean. But it's a love story. They've had an Indiegogo campaign earlier this month to supplement production funds for their micro-budget, and within 2 weeks the project is now featured as one of 8 projects to watch on the Indiegogo homepage. Now, get this. One thing that they have got on here is that Wired magazine, yes, this is Wired, that everybody knows, have said it's the kind of project that will capture the attention of movie nerds, even amidst a flurry of filmmakers around already on Kickstarter and places like Indiegogo. In other words, this lady's going places, and it has to be noted that although, she may be unfamiliar to us, okay, she's been part of the filmmaker labs with Los Angeles Film Independent, won the Adrian Shelley Fellowship at Tribeca, and was recently nominated for the 2012 Berlin Today Award at Berlindale. Okay, so this lady's done a lot of stuff. Her name is Anna Lily Amipour. Even sounds sexy, come on. And the film is called A Girl Walks Home Alone at Night. So Google that and go out and fund it, because I reckon this sounds like an awful lot of fun. I mean, seriously, Iranian vampires in a love story? I'm there.
And another project that we would like to share with you is one called Alexis. And it's actually a film and a graphic novel, a 3-part graphic novel. The film is going to star Anton Troy, who was in the I Was a Teenage Werebear segment of Chillerama, the comedy segment written and directed by Tim Sullivan, directed by Choice Skinner, who was in the award-winning short Brotherly Love, which again Skinner directed. Troy was also in Filth to Ashes and is one of the stars in Adam Rifkin's upcoming comedy reality show. That's the name of the show, which is going to be debuting on American cable this autumn on Showtime, the network over there in the States. The short film Alexis will also star Farley Jackson, who starred in Brotherly Love and I Want to Be a Soap Star, and George Vincent, who guest starred in One Life to Live and was one of the cast in Devil's Inside. The screenplay, which was written by Tony Germanario, was described as Die Hard and Lethal Weapon meets The Fifth Element. So you definitely get the feel that this is an action sci-fi film. And the poster, actually, if you check out online or on Facebook or whatever, the poster looks very interesting indeed. It's kind of like this retro 80s action movie feel, almost like a Schwarzenegger project. It looks really cool. So the idea behind this project is that alongside the 3-issue graphic novel, that the 30-minute short will eventually, the plan is to basically turn it into a feature. And you can go to facebook.com/Alexis movie. That's ALEXUS, Alexis movie, for all the information and the very cool poster, as well as some concept art and some other cool photos. But a little blurb we have here about Alexis. Anton stars as Gideon, who is an impulsive, brooding undercover detective who, along with his watchful veteran partner Daniels, played by Skinner, must infiltrate the stronghold of Russian kingpin Ivan, played by Vincent, to recover a mysterious package from what appears to be a routine drug deal. Everything goes smoothly until Gideon is gunned down and nearly killed during an unsuccessful negotiation. In the encounter, the thugs become suspicious and want to know what's so special about their newly intercepted merchandise. Awakening in a pool of blood and driven by a rage for justice, Gideon is forced to sacrifice everything, including the love of his life, his partner, and his sanity, in a desperate effort to retrieve a package that he alone knows is far more precious than himself, and maybe even the world. High stakes, then, in Alexis. I think it sounds like a cool project, and you should definitely check it out. Like I said, facebook.com/Alexis movie.
And of course, I would imagine you will want to know about the answer to last week's competition to win the box set of Curb Your Enthusiasm, you miserable bastards.
Yes, the winner of the Curb Your Enthusiasm complete box set, which is every single episode and every single season, obviously, is none other than Michael Jones. So thanks for entering. Thanks to everyone else who wasn't quite as successful. But that is only our first competition, because we are now going to give away the results to the second competition, which was for the 2 tickets to the world premiere of the film Modified at the Prince Charles Cinema in September.
Okay, the question you may recall was, well, it had a slightly royal theme. The question being, what is a Prince Albert? Now, according to that bastion of informativeness, Wikipedia, the PA is a ring-style piercing that extends along the underside of the glands from the urethral opening to where the glands meet the shaft of the penis. Yeah, guys, it's a cock ring. And the winner of that delightful box set is...
Adam Lowe.
Enjoy your prize, my dear. Okay, so now I have quite frankly traumatised the delightful Mr. Kelly. It's your turn, guys. Part of the reason for this competition, or the reactions game as we're going to call it, is to try and get people having a bit more fun about actually just reacting to films, TV, whatever the hell it is you want. So, the deal is, you've seen me reacting to New Tokyo Decadence, video still on YouTube, and you've now heard the wonderful Adam reacting to Beautiful Girl Hunter and being slightly traumatised by, well, eggs, dogs and butter and rape and all sorts of weird shit. I'm sorry, I still love that film. It's great. So, what we want you to do is to find a film for one of your friends, or hell, even one for yourself, something you haven't seen before that you've been dying to see, and record yourself watching it. Ideally, this will be like a little audio thing. Just literally, pick up your camera phone and just, put your little video camera on for a second, or if you've got a flip phone or whatever, and just record yourself watching literally just a few minutes of it that you haven't seen before, just to actually see how much you're reacting. Alternatively, if you don't want your face on screen, fine. Just use your mic on your phone and upload it as an audio file. Put it through Windows Movie Maker even. Send it in to us and you can win a prize. Now, so far, the prize we have for this week is...
a copy on Blu-ray, I might add, of the Chuck Norris film A Force of One.
Woo! Chuck Norris, no less. Fella's in The Expendables too, isn't he?
He is, yeah. He's, I believe, one of the villains with Jean-Claude Van Damme.
Oh, squee. Yeah, see, we even got a good prize for you. So seriously, you want this prize, send us in something, stick it on YouTube or whatever. Send us an email to tell us it's there. Alternatively, if you don't quite dare do that, for 2 more weeks, what we will do is we will be nice and we will put ourselves up again as guinea pigs. Squeak! Squeak. Couldn't resist it. And what you need to do is, alternatively, send us a public message basically suggesting a short film or a short piece of TV, something we can watch on YouTube, whatever it may be, to get one more set of reactions out of the pair of us. We appreciate this is a bit full-on to do, but then again, the reason why we're doing it is, damn it, guys, geeks need to stand up for themselves. We need to stand up and be counted. We watch the perviest, funniest, sickest, weirdest shit there is. We should be proud of that. And this is basic. Seriously, we need to have a little bit of pride in what filmmakers are doing and come out and be counted.
You can get to us on Twitter, at BritGeekAICN for me, and at Dr. Karen Oughton, Oughton, for Karen, and Tout as well. Again, I'm plugging Tout, but hey, you can send us your suggestions in the form of a 15-second tout. Just another excuse for you to sign up. I swear we're not being paid by Tout.
No, genuinely funny. I never know when I see those touts whether I want to just kind of pat him on the head or give him a lollipop or give him a motorbike. It's great.
And I might add that I think Karen meant that you could possibly record it on your flip cam and not your flip phone. You're not your flip phone, as it is 2012 and not 2003.
Thank you. I remember how old I am now. So yes, Get your shit to us, win prizes. It's as simple as that. Stand up for geekdom, people. Seriously. Okay, so there you have it, Geekeasy podcasters. Hope you enjoyed the show, including the interview with the rather lovely Paul Davis. See the film, and seriously, even if you can't get to Fright Fest when it comes out, when he puts it online properly, seriously, get to see that film. It will be amazing. Indoors, indeed. Thank you to everybody else who's contributed. So yes, thank you to lovely Chris Carfenio who did our kind of opening little song thing there. Also, the gentleman who did our little ident thing, who is...
Baz Wilkinson from episode 3. Go to episode3.co.uk.
Marvellous. And next week, of course, we have coming up for you a special episode because, of course, we have Fright Fest. So keep an ear out for us then. We're going to have lots of celebrity interviews, prizes, competitions, all the rest of it. For goodness sake, please remember to keep, letting us know what you think on social networking. We know you're there. We keep on getting comments from you. And now it's just us as well. Come on, let's have some geek pride here. Hands in the air, people. We're all geeks and we're proud of it. If you want to tweet me, I am on, my handle even is Dr. Karen Oughton. And Adam?
Yep, mine is BritGeek, AICN.
Great stuff. Get touting us, get on our Facebook page, make yourselves known. So it's goodbye from me, and it's goodbye from him.
It's, goodbye from me. Ronnie Corbett, too.
Goodbye!
Goodbye.